Howdy folks, welcome to the Scannell Agenda. This is show number 112 entitled Hang On Hepsie. Today's date is September 3rd, 2019. I was reading one of these Cape Cod books. I think it was 1910, copyright. Nice book. And there was a story about a little girl who hung on to a windmill blade. Her name was Hepsie, or Hepsie for short. And the boys, what they would do would be to, as the windmill blade came around, they would grab onto it and take a ride up a little bit and then jump off, you know, as long as they dared. Hepsie was there, and she grabbed on and didn't let go. And the boys were aghast at that, and so they yelled to her, "Hang on, Hepsie. She would die if she let go." You know, so hang on. That was the big deal. So hang on, Hepsie. I feel like Hepsie. I really do. The show, I was going to call it These People Have No Vision, after my dad. He used to say that once in a while. He'd say, "These people have no vision." That's kind of negative, though. But hang on, Hepsie's a little more positive. I kind of like that better. And it's Cape Cod. It really is. Real Cape Cod folklore, you might say. But it's a true story. Later on, I guess, it was a battle cry for the Barnstable schools because, you know, they do the sports, etc. And Hang On Hepsie would be one of the cheers that they had, I guess. All right. I'm going to talk today about me and my ability to hang on here through all this nonsense. I call it oligarchy nonsense. And my point would be, protect your project champions. You know, don't protect your police, don't protect the rich, who the police are like putty in their hand at times. If they need something, they get the favor. Find your project champions who actually have, you know, good ideas. I think my ideas are very good, not just good, they're extremely good. And I think that's because I was raised into this political family. And I was just with it at a young age. Town meeting stuff. Dad was my mentor. So, most of my work in politics or project design has been in fisheries over the years, I think. But now this Green Grid Transit System, which is a big, huge, does-it-all mega system, is kind of overtaking my fisheries work as far as the time in, etc. So I'm going to review a bunch of these projects that I work in. And as I say, I work on the clipboard, you know. This is my medium, if you will, and then I come on the show and have a little discussion with the camera. Now, if you were protecting me, your project champion, you would have a newspaper that was more about the truth and less about their own agenda, which is the agenda of the rich. The newspapers and what Trump calls fake news. You know, they're protecting the rich, but to be honest with you, I'm not happy with Donald Trump. He's putting down windmills very cavalierly. I've never seen him have a discussion about it. He just puts it down, which is not a good point. I think I bring something to the table in public service in that, you know, most of us have had a life in the private sector, which is me, fisheries, fishing, you know, working for Other people, I've had my own crew here and there. I don't want to get back into that, but if you are a public servant who can't see the public balance sheet, and I think Donald Trump has this issue, that's a major problem. And so that's why I'm running for Pope and President, as I say. That's a venue for me to discuss issues. And some of these issues are like the clubhouse issues. This is a lot of social service work, the town nurse-based system. So I'm pretty strong in these areas. Oddly enough, I'm doing a broad range of projects. Over the years, they seem to just, you get into something like I get into the clubhouse. And so I didn't exactly know where that was going. I knew I could conquer that like I did with the fisheries, with the market quota system early on before all that mess with, throwing me in jail, throwing me in the loony bin, etc., to win. This is where we go south when we don't have a working two-party system. And the oligarchy, as I call it, as many people call it on the right and on the left, seems to be gaining the upper hand in the United States of America. And I think that unlike China, we're not building, we're serving the rich. So you can criticize China for being communist, but they're doing a lot of infrastructure work, and they build like crazy. And they manufacture, they remind me in a way, in some ways, of what America used to be like, very driven by these projects, these infrastructure projects. But I would say that it's good that we haven't done for instance, the California high-speed railway between, where is that, San Diego and San Francisco? I'm not sure exactly, but maybe it's good that that project didn't get built, because we can't seem to, number one, do these projects. We can't do them. They cost too much. And it makes the projects impossible. The Davis-Bacon Act and all these, the planning is gone crazy and wild at the beginning. It's over planning. So one of the things with my green grid transit is, as I was mentioning on one of these groups, is that I think we better go in and plant our pads and then do the eminent domain later, due to the fact that property values, sorry, my palsy on this side, I'm having a hard time speaking and enunciating my words. So if you're going in with a monorail system that happens to be, let's say, the track is about 120 or 100 feet or 80 feet above grade, and you have these pads coming down, and your tracks, etc., are not steel and cement. It's not the old way, it's the new way. And so you'd be building this stuff pretty quickly, and you'd be pulling a batten, which is boat builder talk, to a fair curve. That is fair on horizontal and vertical. So you'd have a fair run. That's so important. It's kind of a little bit difficult to engineer. It's actually, I think, easier to just do it. And then you'd roughly have an idea within, 100, 200 feet of where your pads are going to go. but it would be ballparked. And then you would say, okay, we're going to be coming off the main line with these runs on and off of the track, and then these will go to stations that could be a few miles from the main track. In other words, the stations would be very much different than a train station that's right next to the tracks, and then the train stops and all this stuff is old. And the new way is for the train cars to peel off, and you walk between the cars, and you either walk forward or aft and get into a car that is peeling off on the forward end or peeling off on the back end. Probably it would be peeling off on the forward end, and your additions would come into the transom or the back end of the train. So you'd have a train that would be basically kind of like a centipede, if you will, and that would be peeling off train cars to go forward and then into a station, and then your trains joining your cars rather, joining the main train would come in from behind. So these are the concepts with what I call the green grid transit. Lately, I have been working with that system larger. I've gone upscale with what I call pods. And I have, I'm sure you're not going to see this very well, but I have 18 foot by 18 foot square open conduits. Now that might be, well, that's big, but the thing of it is, it's a core. It happens to be a core in boat building or aircraft construction or what have you. The core materials are very good. And so these concepts of core construction work here, using the conduits as a core. So if you can envision vehicles traveling within an 18 by 18 foot core, and I have 3 in this case, with the 9-foot dovetails, 2 of them, as opposed to the 777, which is my favorite. I like to change it up. The supports for the monorail, which is composite, will also be composite in my way of thinking, and tables. The tables can also be used as buildings, and they can be used to help to carry road systems for vehicles. So essentially this is a does-it-all. Say where you would want a road system might be traveling on Route 95, going past New York, going through Connecticut, and my wife and I just took a trip to Florida, and we got back the other day. And it's always these same hang-ups, isn't it? You're trying to get to Florida, you're driving, and then what happens is you get bogged down in the city traffic on Route 95. That's exactly what it is, city traffic. They shouldn't be allowed to do it, but they do it. They certainly do. So the thing of it is, the regulation is really the key. So I've evolved into, okay, someone's got to be in charge of logistics, and that would be, I've come up with the post office as being the lead, not on everything, but on with this monorail system, tickets for passengers, also regulating the roadway tolls, and there would be more of these tolls to pay for this system. And so states' rights, so sorry about that. Hate to step on your toes, but we're talking about interstate systems here. With the green grid, it's all interstate, it's local, it's interstate as well. So this business of large core conduits, I kind of like it because structurally it means that we are using less materials, because with a good core system that's underpinning the, in this case, 9-foot dovetails or a 777-foot dovetail track system. So these are all air ride. They could be maglev 200-mile-an-hour units, or they could, you could go slower with electric drives, etc. So there's a lot of different ways of doing this. I'm not the expert on exactly how. I have my favorites, but we all have our favorites, right? My favorite is the air ride, and one reason why it's my favorite is because we have the green grid carrying compressed air. So we'll have hydrogen on hand, compressed air on hand on the track, within the track, and also oxygen-rich compressed air. So in that you have right on hand in the track essentially all this available horsepower. It's just a matter of choosing what particular horsepower you want. And that would vary depending on what you're doing and where you are. For instance, if you were running water uphill in the Rocky Mountains using tankage on a train, that system would probably be much different than running passengers from Boston to New York on a fast train. Could be a maglev, but you wouldn't necessarily be using. This system is very adaptable depending on what you need. So if the need is to drive some water uphill and park it in a reservoir high up in the Rockies, then you've got that on hand. And then so you wouldn't be doing that with the same type of drive systems that you would use elsewhere. And with what I call a 5-foot dovetail for the subway, which is the hanging or suspended trains that, in other words, they're like a gondola. And these have been around for over 100 years in Germany, and it's incredible that we haven't perfected them. I'm not claiming I have at all. But for hanging, I like a broader hanger. And, we all have our opinions on how to do things, but using a bus that converts to a subway is very easy to do. It's a clip-on, matter of just clipping on with these lightweight subway cars. You clip on your tops, clip on your bottoms, so you could clip on, let's say if you were running a ferry in Lake Champlain that would turn into a bus. And this is all tourist-based stuff here too. And you could actually have a boat conversion to clip in on the bottom, maybe a catamaran. And wouldn't that be wonderful for the world's tourism coming to America? And there are all kinds of these riverways and waterways that would apply. So if you were going to a hotel from Boston, you'd get on the system, and your last leg of the trip would be on a boat. Basically, you could fall asleep and you'd get there and, okay, you're at your hotel. Oh, really? So these are tremendous systems that I've been working on in a closet because Cape Cod follows the rich, basically. You don't protect your project champions. I am definitely a project champion on fisheries, and I knew that when I went into the clubhouse world, and I said to myself, I know I can do this, and I did it. I did solve that with the town nurse space system. All right, I'll shift over to the town nurse space system now. Now, at the core of the town nurse space system, let me just define, first of all, what a base means. So I change up and I say base, boss, and board. So if you have an elected board of seven-man board, as it's called, the old language, which I kind of like, but found myself at the town meeting, bending to all this political correctness. Okay, they want to be generic. Okay. All right, it won't kill me. But if you consider that this is a seven-man board, and that's the basis of this social services system, is a seven-man local elected board. And when I say local, I do mean local. So I would envision, let's say if you look behind me at that beautiful map designed by, or drawn up by Walter Gaffney, who was a friend of my dad's, and my dad worked for him. But that's very historical for me, and I love this background here. Let's say if you had a town nurse-based system and you had P-Town, Truro, Wellfleet as one town nurse board. That might be viable. And then you would probably have, let's say, Eastham, Orleans, Brewster, Harwich, and Chatham as another board. So these are small seven-man elected boards. Now, importantly, you would not have your qualified people. They would not have to be a nurse. They would have to be qualified. They could be doctors or specialists. The only unqualified person would be or could be your advocate for disabled, which would be the director of a disabilities clubhouse. And her job or his job would be to advocate for, and I mean advocate for, over and above lawyers, the government, family, agencies, over and above all this stuff. People who are disabled sorely are in need of true advocates. So your town nurse-based system, according to my design, would have on every board would have a clubhouse director. And this would tie into a lot of different things. Clubhouse ties into a lot of different social services in jail for the mentally ill, and work programs in jail and out of jail, and then what I call J&B, a major program for job and bunk, which would plug into, again, locally controlled and owned and autonomous, as opposed to, as I've said before, all these people we support. I've done this before. The disabled are supporting enormous hordes of people that minister to all the disabled people, and it's rather pathetic. It's more pathetic than saying, hey, we got a tornado. Because it's a total ripoff. All right, folks? I just hate a ripoff like this. So the town nurse-based system is one of my systems. I've been working on this for years. It's pretty darn good. So consider it to be a town nurse-based system. Consider it to be a town nurse boss. Town nurse boss system. Well, what do you mean by that? What I mean by that is these are very trusted, qualified people that you elect that outrank a psychiatrist and a doctor right off the bat. Now, if the doctor or the psychiatrist, and I do consider them, I'm sorry, but I have these horrendous opinions about the psych field because I've been in it, and I don't like these people, as I've said. But a lot of people in the system love these people because, you know, they're dependent upon them. So think of it as a town nurse-based system, town nurse boss, and what I mean by boss is your town nurses that you voted for are going to say, hey, we know, for instance, if these shrinks throw someone like me into the mix and say, he's a crazy guy, he's the bad guy, this is pretty weird. And I think it's very unusual when it happens, but it did happen to me, that since they couldn't win a political fight, basically it's the oligarchy or the rich, they said, oh, we have people that can handle him. So democracy right out the window. Hang on, Hepsie, hang on. We have to hang on and do the right thing. Thank you for watching the Scannell Agenda.